let's talk about how we actually see values in the world around us and how sometimes we can't trust our eyes. This is important for accurately representing light, shadow, and form in our drawings. Value relationships. When drawing, it's much more important to think about the relationships between values rather than the individual values in isolation. The values surrounding one value can affect how we perceive that value. For example, how different are the values of these two middle squares? The left one looks a little bit lighter than a middle value, and the right one looks a little bit darker than a middle value. But they're not different at all. They're the exact same value 5. The surrounding values affect how we perceive the values on the inside. The checkerboard illusion. One of the most powerful demonstrations of how our perception of values can fool us is the famous checkerboard illusion. Square A looks darker than square B, but only because of context. Watch this. If we extend the value from A down to B, we clearly see that they're the same value. The actual value we see is the local value plus lighting conditions. The cylinder is casting a shadow over the white square B, making it darker and equal in value to the black square A that's in light. So what's going on here? Are we stupid? No, but our brain is getting tricked. So we expect a black square to be darker than any white square, even when a white square is in shadow. The context is influencing our expectations, which tricks our perception of the values. Even after we know what's happening, it's still hard to believe that they're the same. Context and expectations are powerful. This illusion perfectly illustrates why we can't trust our brain's automatic labeling of things. When we're drawing, we need to override our brain's tendency to say, this is a white square, so I'm gonna make it white. Or this is a black square, so I'm gonna make it black. Instead, we need to see and draw the actual values created by the combination of local value and lighting. This is a very common mistake when drawing portraits. We make the white of the eye literally white, and it can look a little terrifying. We have to remember that the white of the eye is a portion of the eyeball. A ball is a 3D form that has planes facing in all directions, and the value of each plane depends on the angle of the light. As we draw, we need to compare values not only to its immediate neighbors, but the entire picture, especially comparing them to the darkest dark and lightest light. We're gonna have exercises and projects to help us get better at seeing the true values. Avoid tunnel vision. Try to change the way you're looking at your drawing to get a fresh perspective. You can flip it upside down, look in the mirror, tilt your head, tilt the drawing, lean back, anything to get you out of tunnel vision and see the values accurately. Tunnel vision is when we work on an area for a while and we get so focused on it that we can't see anything else. It's like we're looking at the world through a tunnel. We see only a small portion of the whole picture. The problem with this is that we tend to stretch the values in that small portion to a full value range, or closer to a full value range. For example, this ear is in shadow, so all the values here are dark values. When we compare them to the lights, all the ear values are clearly much darker. But if we get tunnel vision and we're working on that ear for a while, and we forget to look at the full picture, the lightest values in the ear start to appear lighter than they actually are. Again, because in relation to everything else we're seeing within that tunnel, they are lighter. What happens often with beginner artists is that these lighter shadows end up way too light in their drawings. They're not shadows anymore, and that breaks the effect of light and shadow on form. So make it a habit to constantly back up from your drawing. If you're standing, then physically walk back. If you're sitting, then lean back and squint. We squinted at our value scales to see major differences and blur similarities. Well, we can squint at a complex subject to do the same and make it easier to see the value relationships. Squinting blurs the image and reduces details. It simplifies the space into larger groups of value. This helps us identify the main shapes and the accurate value relationships of those shapes. Complex things like hands can be broken down into primary, secondary, and tertiary forms. Primaries being the absolute simplest primitive volume. Secondaries are the large masses on top of those primaries, such as the big muscle groups and the bones. And tertiaries are the smaller forms, like veins and wrinkles. Squinting helps us to identify those primary forms and the most important secondary forms. Squint at your reference more in the beginning of the drawing and less at the later phases when you want to see more details. Digital squint? Even squinting is a learned skill and a really useful tool that can help you understand what you're trying to achieve when you're squinting is the median noise removal tool in Photoshop. This is a little better than the simple blur tool because it keeps the edges more accurate, and I find that it's closer to what I actually see when I squint. In Photoshop, go to Filter, Noise, Median, and use the slider to determine the amount of squinting. I love this painting by Sargent, and when studying his decisions, I applied this filter. This really helps to see things clearly without the beautifully distracting paint strokes and canvas texture. I love how he connected the middle values of the bottom lids to the side planes of the head, instead of making them isolated floating shapes. The strong black cast shadow from the nose is also very powerful to add depth. He reserved the full blacks on the face to mostly the nose and a few spots in the eyes and under the mustache. Keep in mind that digital filters like this are training wheels. Eventually, you want to get to the point where you could do this on your own. You don't want to depend on Photoshop to always solve it for you. If you're drawing from life or from imagination, you need to be able to organize and see groups of values intuitively. But if you're just starting out, this is a great training tool to help you see and eventually get there on your own. Just be mindful that it doesn't become a bad habit. Stepping back helps us get a fresh perspective, but sometimes you might need to step away. 1, to get some rest if your eyes are getting tired, and 2, because you might require a full day to clear your mind of memories of the values. You might do a drawing that you feel is accurate, only to come back to it the next day and see mistakes that seem so obvious. This ability to see the true values rather than assumed values is a skill that develops with practice. The more you draw, the more you'll train your eyes to override your brain's preconceptions and see values as they truly are. Instead of getting tricked by your reference, you'll be tricking your viewers with your drawings. There's a lot more coming if you get the premium version. We're going to learn about organizing values with value keys and value ranges for better composition, and go deep into light on form. I'll give you exercises and projects to help you practice, and I'll do a bunch of demonstrations and critique videos to guide you along the way. This course already has over 100 lessons about line, shape, perspective. The remainder of this course is all about shading. I hope to see you in the premium section. That's over at proko.com/drawing.